What's up, everybody? Today I want to talk about Inside Out 2. As the title suggests, this is just a review video, which is very different from my other series that I do, which is Script Doctor. The difference being that in the Script Doctor episodes, I usually try to find what's wrong with the movie. And that's usually because it's easy. The movie wasn't good. But in the review ones, it tends to be much more positive. So yeah, I guess in this video, what I'm doing is kind of praising this movie. I really loved it. I was thinking for a while like how to put all my thoughts cohesively together on one big theme. And I guess more than anything, the reason why this movie was so brilliant was that it was more of the same. Like, if you enjoyed Inside Out 1, well, the first Inside Out, then the second one is a brilliant sequel. I loved it so much. One thing that I really enjoyed about this movie is how the lie was presented. It was almost like, it was very similar to how they set it up in the first movie, right? Where Joy is taking control. Like, she feels very adamantly about what she's doing is the right thing to do. And the same goes for Anxiety. She really does think that she's doing the best that she can for Riley. But of course, that's not usually how stories go. If you're doing everything right, then yeah, the story is not going to be interesting whatsoever. What happened in the first movie is that Joy did have that moment. She almost had that moment of like, oh, maybe I am wrong. Like, Joy just can't be everything, right? And it seemed that people, like her other team, I guess, all the other emotions, were about to give up on it. But then the mom has a conversation with Riley, thanking her for being so joyful, because that move, that whole change in their lives was difficult for everybody. And that moment I was like, all right, Joy, you did the right thing. And in this movie, Inside Out 2, it feels, there's that moment too that happens where Anxiety is kind of like pushing away Riley's old friends, and is kind of like, I don't know, growing up, I guess. But in doing so, she has to, I mean, it's kind of mean what she's already doing, pushing away old friends for no real reason. And it does seem like at that moment, just like Joy, she is doing the wrong thing. But then it starts to work out. Like, Riley very obviously has a good connection with this, this other hockey player who's doing really well. It seems like Anxiety's vision of, okay, we need a plan for the future, is working.
My job is to protect her from the scary stuff she can't see. I plan for the future.
So in that moment, everyone's like, all right, Anxiety, well, you know, seems like you're you're doing everything right. And that was really brilliant. Like, sometimes the lie is a little bit too obvious. And by the way, when I'm saying the lie, I'm referring to this book called the terminology is from How to Build Characters, I think it was, like something about arcs, character arcs or whatever. And really, a lie is essentially what the character believes, only for that lie to do damage or something like that, something along those lines, right? I really liked how it was developed in these two stories in such a similar beat for beat scenario. It was really interesting, but I loved it. Obviously, it gives these two movies a similar vibe or something like that, right? And so it makes it just a really good sequel. And another part that I really liked about it is the adventureness of it, right? Like, I don't know, like, obviously how the mind is like as a terrain is really interesting. And I would say the more intense, exciting parts of Inside Out 1 were definitely when Joy is just like fighting for her life, basically. You know, she's going through like some crazy stuff that's happening in the brain. I think specifically the most crazy one was when she was in the abstract world stuff. Like, how are you supposed to survive that? That made no sense to me. But she did, whatever. But in Inside Out 2, we get more of the same, and it's brilliant. The world is collapsing around them, and they have to figure out a way to get out of it. Like, I'm just glad that they kept that going. Like, it's just good to get more of the same when you're going for a sequel. One thing that made it slightly better is that it was the whole team, and I just like to see all the dynamics going at it at once. Like, I was really upset at Inside Out 1 where it's like, oh, they're split, aren't they? So I never really got to see them all fully interact with each other. But in Inside Out 2, you do. And the basic story structure is the same, which is just, what I like about it is that it's so simple. Like, I can't even think of an easier story than that. Like, it goes all the way back to like the Odyssey, you know what I mean? Where it's like, hey, you're over here, get back home. Like, it is so simple, but it works really well. I think that's why, like, the simplicity of it is really enjoyable. And I was happy to see that. There's another movie that did kind of something very similar just recently. What's it called? The Quiet Place? Origins? Is it Origins or something? Day One. I think it's Day One. I'm done. But in that movie, it was kind of bad. And I will talk about why in a future video. So subscribe for that. And lastly, I want to talk about what is considered the truth, right? Again, pulling from the same book of building character arcs. The truth is usually what we find to be, okay, it's the very opposite of lie, where now that you have discovered the truth, you are kind of living a more fulfilling and happy, nourishing life. You finally aren't hurting people, and you get that catharsis, right? That relief from all the bad things that you've been going through. And that was a brilliant moment. Maybe because I'm a little bit older now, I didn't cry. I'm just like, I'm not gonna do it, which seems like a dumb thing to do. But yeah, it was really sad. I mean, I'm going to spoil the movie, obviously. But I think when it comes to anxiety, it does seem to feel like that. Where it's like the idea that you're not good enough overwhelms any other idea about yourself. And just like the last movie, this movie is about accepting hard truths about yourself. In the last movie, it was about, fine, maybe not everything can be about joy. And this movie, you have to accept that you are multiple things. Sometimes you're a great person, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're mean when you shouldn't be. Sometimes you're the best friend someone can have, and sometimes you're the worst person that someone can interact with. You are many things, and that's okay. That's such a it's definitely a little bit more nuanced than that. I think they actually did a really great job of kind of pushing that message through, and it was a beautiful one, and it's definitely one that you could kind of I mean, it's Pixar, so they at least give you something that's easy to agree with, but who cares? It's honestly a message that's worthwhile. One that should be encouraged. So far, I feel like I say this every time I make one of these reviews. Is this one of my favorite movies of the year? It might be. I can't think of another movie that I saw this year that was as good. Anyways, my point is, Inside Out 2 was brilliant. I loved it so much. Please comment down below. Tell me what you liked about it, or tell me what you didn't like about it. Because there is one thing that I actually am not remembering. Because I do have one big criticism of this movie. Why was embarrassment helping sadness? It's just, if you're going to give a character a motive, it's such a like narrative altering motive, there has to be something, right? Like, there is no real bond between them, or nothing really established between them that made me say, like, oh, well, yeah, of course, embarrassment is gonna help sadness, right? but that part of the movie just didn't make sense. Like sadness kind of like, what's the right word? Intervenes? I don't know. She's almost like a little spy in this movie, right? But she's in there and she gets into the headquarters without anybody knowing, but embarrassment sees her. And embarrassment can easily tell anxiety and be like, hey, you know? But it doesn't go in that direction. Instead, he just like lets it happen kind of thing. And in fact, he helps her by putting up like more, I think like books or whatever to block her from their view. And I just don't understand that. Like, it just kind of happened. It's really weird. It just seems like it was definitely a moment that was forced that could have, you know, been made organic, but they didn't put the thought into it. But other than that, I mean, that's just one criticism. Overall, this is a brilliant movie. And I loved it so much. And that's all I have to say. Have a good one.